Welcome to the Sunflower Conversations. Your host today is myself, Chantal, and also is Lynn Smith from the USA, who heads up the USA operation. So, hello, Lynn, how are you?
Hello, very good. Thank you.
We will be discussing dementia in this episode with Jay Reinstein, who runs the VOA Foundation in America, which supports people living with Alzheimer's, which is a form of dementia. But before we start that, I'm just going to give a quick visual description of myself. Then Lynn, if you can do the same, and then you, Jay, just for accessibility. So I am a female in my midlife. I have got brown skin. I've got long brown curly hair. I'm wearing glasses and I've got a scarf around my neck and the I support sunflower lanyard on. So, Lynn, can I pass over to you?
Absolutely. My name's Lynn. Obviously, I am a white female with dark brown hair, wearing a black jacket, burgundy shirt, and I I have fringe or bangs, as I was told. Bangs in the US, fringe in the UK. So, Jay, how about yourself?
I'm Jay Reinstein. I'm 64-year-old white male. I have no fringe or bangs because I am bald. I'm wearing a black sort of turtleneck shirt, and I'm wearing the lanyard that has sunflowers on it.
Thank you very much. And thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. So, globally, we know that someone develops dementia every 3 seconds. The more common types of dementia include Alzheimer's, vascular dementia, Lewy bodies, frontal temporal dementia, mixed dementia, young onset dementia, but there are also rarer forms of the health condition. So Jay's obviously from the charity, so he's got a depth of knowledge around dementia and about his own lived experience. So, can we start off, Jay? Can you just please share with us what has your personal journey been?
Well, I probably at 57 years old, I was still working in local government, and I had a career of almost 30 years serving, I think the last six as an assistant city manager in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Had a great job, had a family, wife, three kids, five grandkids. Life was going pretty well. And I started struggling a little bit in the office with recall. I'd be in meetings and it was just difficult to process information at times. And I really attributed it initially to information overload because it was a big job, a lot of responsibility. And as months went by, I started noticing that things weren't really changing. And I remember a specific situation when I was with our city manager and city attorney, where they had asked me about federal funds regarding a recent hurricane. And I was over the federal funding. And it was like I was hearing the question for the first time. I mean, honestly, I was totally confused and wasn't able to answer the questions. I was embarrassed. And I just said I would get back to them a little later with the details. And then another situation happened soon thereafter. I always use this example because it just really hit home. I was working with a community group, and one of the folks asked me the departments that I supervised in the organization, and I could not remember the departments. And I remember in the back, our communications director said, "Oh, Jay's just having a senior moment," kiddingly, and sort of rattled off the departments. It was probably a few days later, I ended up calling a friend who's a neurologist over at Duke Hospital, and they got me set up with a neuropsychological because I just didn't know what was happening. And we did the neuropsych. He noticed a few issues, but I came back, I think it was 9 months later, and that's when he could see that there were some real issues with memory. And I ended up getting an MRI. I had a PET scan, and there was amyloid plaque on my brain. And then I got a diagnosis of early onset Alzheimer's. So I was 58 at the time. And it was a game changer. I mean, my life just changed dramatically after the diagnosis.
So, 57 is when you first started noticing the symptoms.
Yeah.
And you've told us two quite significant things there, but I imagine there was probably a few other things in your day-to-day life, maybe at home, where your memory was affected.
Yeah. One of the things that was sort of interesting in my situation, my wife lived an hour and a half from me. I had to buy a home in the community that I worked in that was a residency requirement. So I was away from her 5 days a week, and I'd come home on the weekends. So my wife didn't notice a lot. She just noticed that I would ask, similar, after the fact, it was telling me, yeah, you'd asked the same question a number of times, but she didn't really think much about it. And I think it was really myself struggling. I'd work later hours, actually. I'd be there till like 8 o'clock because it was harder for me to go through some of the emails and just really get through the day. And my counterparts would be leaving at like 6. I'd be working late. And then I found myself also giving my staff more of my work. I would be, typically a week for me would be having to go before city council during one of our agendas, and I would not necessarily be able to talk about one of my issues. So I would give it to one of my direct reports. And I was doing that more and more. And it was sort of scary. And I was embarrassed, quite honestly, because I really didn't know what was happening.
Yeah.
There's a lot of confusion.
Yeah.
It wasn't good. It was not I was not in a good place, I will tell you.
Lynn will understand the setup of local council and government more in America, more so than I, but that sounds like a very responsible job.
Yeah, it was. It was. It was really a big. We had about 2,200 employees. I had 6 departments, and I was there for about 6 years. So for me, it was my life. And I don't know if Lynn wants to speak to it, but I can just tell you there's a lot of headaches dealing with local politicians. They are very needy, and they expect you to, as soon as they call, they want a result.
You'd have to be on your game, So I can see how you would be embarrassed if you couldn't remember something that you should know, and you're in the public's eye a lot. So I can understand how that would affect you and how you would kind of start having other people take over because you were kind of embarrassed of what you might forget. Was the diagnosis a relief when you found out?
It's funny. Yes and no. I think it was more fear. Yeah, I was glad that I knew there was a name to it, but I also feared future. What is it going to mean for my finances? What is it going to mean for my family? I don't want to be a burden. And then I think a big thing is, what was I going to do? I mean, I'm still it's not young, but it's relatively young where I had a full life ahead of me. And I wasn't sure what the heck I was going to do. So it was a lot of fear and sadness and depression and anxiety and, just about everything. And I think it was very difficult. It's still difficult for my wife to talk about a lot. I know she struggles with having to go to support groups and things of that nature. It's just a real struggle for her. My daughter it's a little easier for her, and she's been there for me. They've both been there for me, but it's a struggle.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? When it doesn't just impact you, it's your nucleus family and the people around you, because your whole life had to change. So you presumably gave up work at that point, did you, when you got your diagnosis, or did you keep on for a little while? Or?
Chantal, what was really helpful is that I had an employer who was very understanding, and my boss gave me a 6-month period to transition out of the organization. It was very helpful for me because I was able to tie up loose ends and also help hire the new person that would take my place. What was difficult, I think, and was sort of interesting, I was then starting to hear the stories from people. I remember my HR director, she had told me sometimes I would call her like 2 or 3 times in a day about the same issue.
Really?
Telling me now stories after the fact. And I don't think people put 2 and 2 together, but I was hearing those. Even my boss said, you weren't the same for the last while, Jay. I could tell there were issues, but we just sort of, it wasn't a big deal, but people noticed there were some changes. But I felt like I was embraced by my organization, including the elected officials, and that made me feel pretty good. Now, there were people in the organization, and it would get back to me and that was just unfortunate. I think people just needed to be educated about the disease, but there were people that were saying, well, why is he still here? How is he making decisions? And it was very hurtful, but I didn't know about the disease. I didn't realize that a diagnosis isn't a death sentence.
Yes.
And I I've done so many things advocating over the last several years, and it's given me purpose. I wouldn't have thought that when I received the diagnosis, but I have really made the best of a bad news.
In terms of where you are now with your diagnosis, which is what, about 5 years on
Yeah.
from, and you're before we started recording, you were talking about projects that you're working on and traveling,
Yeah.
etc. Do you think that the things that you're doing are like passion projects and you're not
Yes.
under kind of like a responsibility, a burden to deliver for the, for the state or whatever? Has that affected the severity or the frequency of your symptoms or not?
That's a really great question. That's never been asked quite like that, and that's I think absolutely. I went through a period of sort of a really dark period for me. I'm still, I still see a therapist every 2 weeks. I have an incredible network of friends, but finding that purpose and finding those projects, and I'm on, I think, 4 different boards right now. I feel like I have purpose, and what I'm doing is making a difference, and it's giving people hope. And more importantly, I feel it's giving me hope because I wake up every day, and not every day is great. Sometimes I have difficulty in the mornings, but I feel like there are things that I can still do. And honestly, when I get together with friends, we don't talk about my disease that much. I have a lot of other health issues. So whether it's lupus, I just got diagnosed again with, oh God, it's with my eye. I have to get injections in my eye now, and I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, it's pretty serious. The point is, I could focus on all my medical stuff and go crazy, but I also have sort of a glass half full kind of outlook. And
Yeah.
while there's serious things going on in my world, I have so many great things going on: the travel, the family, friends. I go to lunch. I don't drive anymore, but I have friends picking me up for lunch just about every day. And so I get to see people, and I'm living life.
Kind of
I'm
like
living
it's
life.
an early retirement, doing the things that you actually.
Yeah. And things that I wasn't, I was a workaholic, Chantal. I mean, I work, work, work. I loved my job. I loved being a public servant. So for me, I was in heaven, really. I mean, it was just the perfect match for me. After grad school, everything just fell in place. So I really worried about not working anymore. But, I got a pension, and then I got Social Security disability. So financially, I was able to survive. And that's a good thing. So that took a lot of pressure off of my family, but it could be a lot worse. It could be a lot worse.
I mean, I don't know if you know what the prevalence is of early onset dementia. Is that increasing now, early onset? Because it's something where we always would associate with, much older generation.
Yeah, they say now, again, the statistics aren't that accurate. I think it's between 2 and 300,000 early onset in the US. I think it's a lot more, but with early detection and this new blood test that's now been approved by the FDA in the US, early detection is going to get those numbers. I think those numbers are going to go way up. And through my journey, I mean, I've met people in their early 40s that have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And again, like you said, I always thought it was, an old person's disease. And the expectation is, someone sitting in a wheelchair drooling sort of at the end but there's so many people that are still living life with the disease. And that's what I want to focus on. It's reducing stigma. Look at me. People will say, oh, you don't, it's the old thing. You don't look like you have Alzheimer's. And I always say, well, what does that look like?
Yeah,
So, that's sort of where I am.
I really like your philosophy. It's very positive outlook,
Yeah.
reducing stigma. Um, One of the things that we do want to cover in the podcast, though, is what the barriers are, so that anybody listening can be a bit more empathetic and understanding. So I'm not wanting to sort of go down on a doom and gloom road, but it would be very useful to find out what are some of those. So obviously there's a big shift in terms of like working.
Yeah.
You mentioned that mornings can be difficult. So just in general, and also some of the comments that you got from your colleagues, that
Yeah.
stigma, which really hurtful comments. Are there any other challenges and adjustments that you've had to navigate? Like you were talking about your morning routine.
Sure, absolutely. Well, one of the big thing was sort of my loss of independence with the inability to drive. So not being able to drive was a big one, and I wasn't sure how I was going to handle it. But I fortunately have that group of a lot of good friends that have helped me in that area. I think, quite honestly, you had mentioned early on the different types of dementia. Whether it's frontal temporal or Alzheimer's. I think everyone has different barriers. I think for me, it was what was really important is getting into a support group who really you don't feel all alone. And you can talk about things that are affecting you. Like for me, I'm not ashamed about my anxiety issues and depression. And I take anxiety medication. I see a therapist every 2 weeks. And that's, I think, just part of the journey. I think another thing that I've tried to do is, it's hard for me to read books now. I don't retain what I'm reading. So rather than focus and get really frustrated with trying to read, what I do is I'll just look at headlines. I'll go online and I just look at headlines and maybe read the first couple sentences that sort of give me an idea. So I know what's going on in the world. It's those little things. I use a calendar for everything. So even when I have not an appointment or something I need to remember, I just plug everything into the calendar. And it's just sort of my way to remember sort of my to-dos and appointments and everything like that. Because it's like I'll be talking to someone and then I remember something. I say, hold on a minute. Let me just put this in here. Otherwise, I'll forget. And then I think the other thing is, too, just sort of a thing that's helped me. I'll be watching a series. I mean, I love some of these new series on Netflix, or there's some great things on TV. And I find that if I have to wait a week for the next episode, I don't remember. So what I try to do is binge watching. It's much easier if I can watch 4 episodes back to back to back so just little things like that have helped me out a great deal. And then, like I said, support groups, getting involved, not isolating yourself. Isolation is really bad. And if the more I can use my brain and to stay active, the better I think I am. And I think my neurologists, I have 2 neurologists in 2 different hospitals. They both agree. It's keeping that brain active has really been helpful for me. I hope that answered some of your questions.
Oh my gosh, no, I was just thinking about the advance of technology in terms of when you said you plug it into your calendar. I'm
Yeah.
assuming that's on your phone, is it?
Yes,
Yeah.
right on the iPhone.
So, that's just great, because if it was, I don't know, 20 years ago, and it'd be like getting your diary out and having to write all these little things in there, it would be a lot more challenging, wouldn't it?
Oh,
And you can leave a
absolutely.
little voice note, even if like, if typing becomes difficult, or spelling or anything like that, you can leave notes in the form of a voice note, or you can annotate them into your calendar or your to-do. And Netflix as well. I mean, in America, we've always had access to about 1 billion channels, where in the UK,
Oh my
that's
gosh.
been a more recent in the last 20 years for us here. Used to
Yeah.
be, when I was little girl, it was 3 channels.
Me
Um,
too.
okay. So
Same
yes,
thing.
that the advance of like binge watching and being able to devour a season or whatever, which means that you are able to be included. And then if your friends are watching those programs, you can join in the
Exactly.
conversation. And it's
That's right.
in a turn that also reduces the isolation, because there's things to participate in, conversation and current
And you
affairs.
feel like you're part of you're part of the group. I mean, you don't want to feel different and having to, I don't want a lot of accommodations. And you said something that really has helped me is the voice. My typing is really bad. So everything I do, from my emails to my calendar, everything. And then I have to check, because it sometimes will, autocorrect and it's not correct. But the point is, that has helped. Just the voice and scheduling things and doing really everything has been a huge help.
Jay, when I met you through Voice of
Yes.
Alzheimer's, you also have Jim Taylor that works with you.
Yeah.
So is he one of the good friends? How did that all come about? And tell us a little bit more about Voices of Alzheimer's, because
Yeah. Yeah. So Jim is the president. I am one of the officers. So I happened to be in Denver, Colorado, and I met Jim for the first time. I think it was 5 years ago. It was a AAIC conference. It was the medical folks from all over the world were coming in to Denver to talk about new Alzheimer's research. And Jim, I think we were on one call one time before, but anyway, we started talking and he had this vision for an organization that was run by people with early onset Alzheimer's or Alzheimer's in general. And he sort of became this visionary, and I was there in the very early stages. And we created, we have the Voices of Alzheimer's Foundation. We have two parts. One part can do our lobbying with Congress. And then the other part is sort of the fundraising piece. We have different programming. We have podcasts to inform folks about new treatments. This one legislative item is really big, and I just mentioned that. This is something VOA is really pushing, is to get people with an early diagnosis before the age of 65 to receive their Social Security disability benefits, but most importantly, Medicare insurance immediately instead of a 2-year wait. Because honestly, there's so many folks that are diagnosed with this disease and then they're out of work, and then they, the money and the insurance goes away. So we are now working with a lobbyist. We have, I think, 2 co-sponsors now for a bill, and we're hoping we can gain some traction with that. We're also working with general practitioners and neurologists to introduce them and make sure that folks are aware of the different treatments, because what's very interesting, a lot of general practitioners don't know a lot about Alzheimer's. So we're trying to do these sessions where it's a lot of information sharing. We just did a thing with the Sunflower Program, which is very exciting. We had a group of our champions. Those are people who are members of our organization. We did a letter writing campaign, and we sent letters to all of the airlines. And we said, hey, we wanted to introduce the Sunflower Program because it really can benefit people with hidden disabilities. And we started gaining some traction. I know Lynn was extremely helpful with this, but those are the kind of things we do. It's just really getting out there and trying to change and even reduce stigma regarding this disease. And I don't think I explained it maybe as well as I could have, but it's really a great organization. We do get, I do have to say, we get a lot of money from big. We just completed a video that will be going on different ads around the country about Alzheimer's disease. And, we're doing a lot of things.
So busy.
It is. It's really a great organization. And we have 6 members now on our board that are living with the disease. And then we have 6 other members that are very successful business people around the country that had helped us initially with sort of our initial funding. And now we're doing very well with our funding.
I know VOA has been great in partnering with us as a sunflower organization. And I love your letter writing campaigns, especially we kind of agree who to target or who to actually send the letters to. And, we did have United Airlines come on as our first airline partner, and you guys have been wonderful sending lots of letters to them and giving me feedback every time you go to an airport. And a lot of times I'll get pictures from Jay at the airport, which is great. It's nice to see and what's working well and what his experiences have been.
Can I share a really interesting experience just 2 weeks ago regarding I was at Raleigh-Durham Airport and heading to Boston. I had a meeting with a pharmaceutical company that invited me for a couple of days. So I went with a friend of mine because I don't like traveling myself. So my friend and I are going through security. He gets through before me and I get stopped. They say that my ticket did not match my passport. They would not let me go through. And I'm like in a panic because he's already through. He should have waited for me, but that's another story. And they said, we're going to have to figure this out. And I said, well, what are we going to do? Well, the TSA guy recognized the sunflower right away, which was really nice. He walked me to my airline back to JetBlue. They got the ticket fixed. He walked me back to security, got me through security. And when it was over, when he got me through, I asked to see his manager because I was so impressed with the great customer service. And both of them were familiar with it. I wrote a letter to TSA talking about my experience, and they responded, not in an automated response, that they were going to share this with his coworkers and everything. And the point was, this lanyard made a difference. And honestly, it has helped me. The first time I heard about it was in the US. I read an article and I knew it was more popular in Europe. And I was in Heathrow a couple years ago. That's how I got in touch with Lynn. I was in Heathrow. I asked the person from United, I believe it was United or American, I can't remember, but I think it was United, if he had a lanyard. And once I got the lanyard from them, there was one of the employees was wearing one as well. They took care of everything for me. And you talk about anxiety. Heathrow's a big place, and this really made a difference. So I am sold on it. I wear it all the time to airports. And it also opens up conversations with people in line, because people will often ask, what is that? And I'm proud to tell them, about the programs. It's been a really good program, and I'm so glad that we connected our voices of Alzheimer's with it. But hopefully we're going to connect a lot more people with this program, because it really does make a difference.
Absolutely. And there's 3 things that you're living with, and they're all non-visible.
Yeah.
Nobody would know that you have lupus or that you have a degenerative eye condition either. So
that's right.
Yeah, you're an amazing advocate. No wonder Lynn was so happy to meet you and get connected.
Yeah, it's been great though. I think that we really want to stress the issue with other airlines, because honestly, I try to fly United now, knowing that they support this. You would think that other airlines would want to get on board with this. To me, it's just a win-win. I mean, it's not a huge cost. It's great when you talk about customers, from a customer service perspective, and it really does make a difference. So the hope is we continue plugging away and we get another airline. I know Air Canada is on board, but if we can get more airlines in the US on board, I think it's just a win-win.
Yeah, and then I mean in the UK, well, also in America, we're in across all sectors. So transportation, entertainment, leisure, hospitality, and that's what we want. We want the sunflower wearer to have an end-to-end journey where they are acknowledged and supported. And you've been so amazing. I felt really emotional during this conversation. So thank you for that. I have one final question, and I don't know if Lynn has anything else that she wants to ask, but do you have any advice for somebody who's recently received a diagnosis of any form of dementia?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, first of all, you got to figure out sort of what you're going to do. I think one of the things that really helped me is I had a social worker that was part of the neurologist's office. The social worker really helped walk me through the process. There's so many things and resources out there, but having that social worker was really important. Getting involved in a support group. There are support groups for either early onset or Alzheimer's, and now most of them are on Zoom, so you don't have to drive somewhere to go. Get involved in an organization. I was very involved with the Alzheimer's Association, and I ended up serving on their national board of directors. That it opened a lot of doors, but it started with the Walk to End Alzheimer's, and I started meeting people that way and just getting involved. I think that it's easy to sit home and watch TV all day, but I would recommend that, go to a baseball game, try to hang out with friends. There are organizations, there's some museum days they do here for people with Alzheimer's, just in the Durham area. It's finding those activities and finding something you do. I started pottery, because I needed something, and I always liked art. So for me, it was very therapeutic for me to find that hobby, because I didn't have a lot of hobbies. It was pretty much watching sports. And when I found pottery, that was really good. So, it's finding that passion project, finding something you love, getting, there are those treatments out there now that are slowing down the progression. There are a lot of resources out there. So check your resources.
And
I don't know what else.
how do people reach out to the charity, the organization, VOA?
Voices of Alzheimer's. Well, you would just go to Voices of Alzheimer's Foundation or Voices of Alzheimer's .org. We're on, we have an incredible website. You can join as a member. Membership is only $10 a year. So it's really nothing. And you get so much out of it, from the podcasts to a lot of resources that we provide.
Amazing.
Thank you so much, Jay, for joining us today. It's been so wonderful to speak with you.
It's been great being here. I really appreciate the opportunity, and we'll keep pushing this sunflower program, and hopefully we'll have more airlines in the U.S. on board.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Just
Thank
to
you.
say, please go to your healthcare practitioner and do everything through the medical profession, who can advise you on your own individual situation.